I learned to work in spite of what was happening externally, and that like to separate those, right?
Yeah, it's like you're not dependent on the extrinsic feedback to like put in the work.
Exactly. For me, there are a few big lessons I learned on the mission. The first was how to really work hard. I mean, your schedule is regimented. Like you're out the door at 11 a.m. every day, and you are either doing service projects or trying to talk to people in the streets or knocking on doors until 9 p.m. every day. You have an hour break for lunch at 4, but it's like 12 straight hours of just grind. And there are months that go by without any success. And in Ukraine, it was like you could go months without anybody wanting to talk to you, or anybody like wanting to hear what you have to say, or like, I mean, frankly, most people hating you, right? Like they saw you as a foreigner trying to invade their space. But you just keep going, right? And it's freaking 30 below zero, 40 below zero, and you're just walking around trying to talk to people. Nobody wants to talk to you, trying to like find service projects to do. It's just a brutal experience for me. But at the same time, probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done. Like even startups, which are super hard, pale in comparison to that.
Really, what was a rewarding moment from that, where like you were just like, was there what was the most rewarding moment?
I mean, the honest answer is just like knowing that you did it, right?
Yeah.
Like just not having given up. I mean, and we showed up in Ukraine and like, so I got out to Ukraine in like 2008, right after the financial crisis hit. And the first city I lived in was a little city called Gorlivka, like up on kind of the eastern Ukrainian border next to Russia. And it was a mining town. And post 2008, so everybody worked in the mine. Like there are a few mines there. Literally 90% of the town worked in the mine. And in 2008, all of the foreign investment dried up. And so the mine just shut down. So it was like crazy unemployment. Nobody knew what to do. I mean, they had pretty solid government benefits, but like you were either working in the mine for free and hope that like, and that was fascinating to me. A lot of people are just like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm gonna go work in the mine and like hope that they back pay us later or something. But like it was that desperate of a situation that a lot of people just kept going to the mine. I can't even imagine like working 8 hours a day in a mine. And then, you could tell who had just come from the mine because they'd be covered in coal dust, and they, had like the raccoon looking eyes, and like it's super dangerous. And people are just so desperate for anything at that time. I mean, it's hard to remember now, but like that was right at, the entire world was in like economic free fall, and being in Eastern Ukraine, even more so. But yeah, it's just you grew up super fast. And you learn to manage yourself and your emotions, and to not stop working really fast.
Did that experience affect you later on, or like how did it affect you?
Oh yeah. I mean, it is not easy to work 12 hours a day for 6 months and see literally zero success, right? Especially when it's, freezing cold outside and you're surrounded by people that not hate you, but like a lot of people did. And like, you'd get spat on, you'd get hit, you'd get, whatever you can imagine. And you see everything. Like normally I know parts of Eastern Ukraine way better than people who live there, because you're walking around in the streets all day. And you're talking to everybody who will talk to you. So it's also a slice of life that normally that now I'm not exposed to, right? I would never go talk to every person I see on the streets anymore. So the most important thing for me was just like learning you don't give up, and it's not like, I learned to work in spite of what was happening externally, and that, like, to separate those, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's something a lot of people struggle with, is like separating the reward or the, what comes from your work with from like doing the work. And you learn to, like, how do you describe this?
Yeah. It's like you're not dependent on the extrinsic feedback to like put in the work.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
because a lot of us are in like, when you don't see positive feedback pretty quickly, you're like, oh, this isn't working, you give up, right? Like in like, I don't know, sometimes a week or like a month, or certainly, or like several months. But I mean, if you're going like 6 months without any positive feedback and still going, that's like pretty amazing, right? Most human beings wouldn't do that.
yeah, you learn to, like, I think that's the exact perfect way to describe it, is your motivation flips from extrinsic to intrinsic. And that was probably the most important thing that happened, because now, like, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter if, numbers are going up or not. What matters is if I am pleased with myself, and if I feel like I did a good job. And in some ways that's way harder to, like, I'm harder to please than anybody externally is, or I can be. And you learn to, like, you stabilize. You learn to not be, because the extrinsic rewards will fluctuate wildly, and something you have zero control over in many instances, right? Like, I'm sure you noticed that in startups, that, like, how hard you work as a founder is not directly correlated to how much money you make at all. I mean,
For
it's
sure.
correlated, but it's not like causal. And crazy stuff happens that you have zero control over whatsoever. And all you can do is decide how you're going to react. So you learn to focus on, the inputs of what you're putting into something, and the output becomes like, how do I feel about the work that I'm doing, as opposed to, what tangible results is somebody else giving me.